Hi, I'm Jonathan Ward.
I'm Sonia Jante.
And I'm Kimberly Lane. Together, we're unlocking leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. Let's get to it. Our question today is from Eliza in Bethesda. What skills will leaders need to develop in 2022 in order to be successful, and why? Jonathan, we're going to have this question go to you first. What do you recommend to Eliza?
Wow, I would say flexibility is the number one thing that I think about right now, is that if you're set in your ways, you're going to be surprised from the very outset. You've got to be prepared to meet your staff where they are, where your clients where they are, deal with an extremely fluid job market out there right now. I think that if you don't know how to dance, it's going to be a tough year for you in 2022.
And I was going to say, I think that you had experience with the leader actually having to be flexible recently when you were on a cruise. Do you want to share that story?
I did. It was fascinating. I was working as a lecturer on a cruise ship a couple months ago, and we were in the situation where the Omicron virus was getting worse and worse, and some of the ports decided they didn't want our ship to dock. And so we would have situations where the cruise ship actually docked, and then we would be told that nobody was allowed on shore. And so the cruise director had to use the word that's become very popular in the last couple of years, had to pivot very quickly to try to turn what was supposed to be a shore day into a sea day, and get all of the things in line to entertain the passengers and keep them amused, and make sure that everybody on the staff was fully attuned to making sure that nobody missed anything in the customer experience, even though it was a very disappointing thing that happened. It could potentially have been very devastating for a lot of people to miss on their favorite shore excursions. But it was, again, just an opportunity to see the lengths that leaders would go through to try to be adaptive in the moment to keep people happy.
Wow, that's amazing, because when you're on vacation, you're really looking forward to it. You want to be in a good mood, and to have a disappointment and then still stay in a good mood. Touche.
Yeah, I always like to think, I was thinking about keep your knees bent, right? So that you can be agile and respond. Like when I'm a big tennis player, I'm not saying that I'm a good tennis player, but keeping your knees bent so you can constantly move and be agile, I think is very important. And I think too, kind of along the lines what you've talked about, Jonathan, is having the mindset too, that if something has to change, don't be so rigid in assuming that the way you had planned for it is the right way. I always like to think things that work out best for the people who make the best of the way things turn out, and just having this attitude that, this is the flow, this is the way it's supposed to turn out. I just to be flexible and go with it as opposed to resisting it, right? Especially as leaders, we tend to be more type A and want things to work out the way we want them to work out. So having that flexibility, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and I think having more than one plan B, I mean, it's nice to have a backup plan, but realizing that that's going to have to be fluid and flexible as well, because the things that made sense when you came up with plan B are not necessarily going to be what's in play when it's actually needed.
Yep, exactly. And I would add, from my perspective, I still think we need a huge amount of empathy, a huge amount of vulnerability, because of the complexities of a leadership position today, because it's not just about the work. It's about keeping the people engaged, dealing with a hybrid work environment, dealing with lack of a status quo, if you will, ambiguity and change, and realizing, people are, especially women in the workforce, if you're working from home and managing kids, usually that falls to the woman. And whether the kids are having to stay home because of COVID, they tested positive, or whether it's homeschooling, but I still think a lot of empathy for what people are going through from a stress level from their home environment and just all this change and uncertainty. So, and then with that too is the vulnerability from your own perspective and giving yourself some grace, right? And realizing we are not going to be perfect and we're not going to have all the answers. And that's going to continue to be the case with all this change moving forward. So those are the two things I would suggest: empathy and vulnerability.
That's a great idea. One of the things that I think about when you talk about the needing to have more empathy, I think of the emotional intelligence competencies, and the fact that being really aware, emotionally aware of yourself. I was one time in a conference where somebody was making an analogy about like how can you tell and what is the influence of a leader as it relates to influencing everybody else on the team. And they said, think of a light bulb and think of if the leader hasn't dealt with what emotionally is distressful to them, then that light bulb isn't shining clear. And so it has whatever tone, whether it's green, yet, really, and that radiates out to everybody else. And so I think to myself always, it's like, okay, how clear am I? How clear is the leader in understanding where they're at, so that what they radiate out is clarity and to bring people connected back. I totally agree with that. You know, one of the things that I think is so important that I've never experienced prior to this, and that is we have gone through a journey for the last 2 years that we've never been on before. Therefore, everybody is different. We all are experiencing life differently. And now that people are going back to work, I think it's really important sort of to like meet people where they now are and sort of have like a let's learn more about each other and understand what it is that is, you know, because even in looking at your own business or looking at your own industry, things have changed significantly. And so one of the things is like, go give yourself permission for the new you and the new you all around you. And then let's take a look at how you connect the dots. When you're looking at patterns of information, you may now need to look at other things that you never looked at before because they become relevant. I'm sure most CEOs never thought they would need to be aware of, you know, the health issues or health situations of their employees as much as they have now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I was going to say, for me, it almost comes down to how you go about questioning what's the reality that everybody perceives here. I would think, just thinking about other big organizational changes that I've been through. And, you know, sometimes when you go through a reorg in an organization, you know, here's the way things used to be, here are the way things are now. But, you know, I think there's still a whole series of unspoken truths that people are carrying with them about what they assume the world is going to look like when we get through this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and what does getting through it mean going back to the way things were, or does it mean we've now gone to a new level of doing something and we're never going to be able to go back to that way that it was before? And I think there's still a lot of people who, even though they say they've accepted and are being flexible, they still hold this hope in the back of their minds that somehow things are going to go back to the way they were in 2019.
Yeah, and have you any of you ever watched Super Soul Sunday with Oprah Winfrey? It was something that she did on a Sunday, and she'd always interview a great author, Mariel Hemingway, or somebody about their life, or anybody who had just a very soulful experience that happened. And she was interviewing a gentleman, and I can't remember his name, but he had been living in Thailand when the tsunami hit. And
Nate Berkus.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he was talking about how when the tsunami came in, him and his partner got separated. And then as the wave started to come in, he was able to see his partner floating towards him, and he grabbed his hand and they were reuniting and so thankful that they had found each other. But as they were holding their breath and holding onto each other, of course, the wave had to proceed out. And as it proceeded out, it pulled so strongly that it separated them again, and he lost his partner. But it was just a very tearful, moving experience. But he said, I'm trying to find my new normal. I have to move forward, and my partner's not here. Our time was then, and now I've got to move forward in my next journey, right? And so what's my new normal? What's my new rhythm? It's going to be different, and it's going to take some adjustment, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be fearful, and we're going to be insecure about it, and it's going to be anxiety provoking, but eventually we will have, as long as we're keeping our knees bent and flexible, we will come to a situation where we have a little more calm, a little more peace. And I think knowing too that we will get there is important too. The confidence that we will again, resume to some kind of calm or normalcy. It just won't be what we believe it used to be, right? So,
a term that I like that I got when I was in technology that we can apply here both personally and professionally was, I think it was Andy Grove who came up with it, and that was inflection point. So when a particular business or situation leads to where something is definitely dying or going away or moving into another, there's something new that's being born, something new that's starting. And I think that we're going to have to get used to in a series of inflection points So
Right.
there is, so I think the more that people understand that at the core, as human beings, we are naturally creative, we're naturally inventive. And so let's now design what we want to be able to create instead of trying to go back to something, because it's like the timeline no longer aligns. It's no longer possible.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is kind of I was having a tennis lesson the other day. Of course, I'm talking about tennis. And this particular coach of mine, he was like, Kimberly, you know, I'm not so sure what's going on. The tennis club is getting bought. And so I'm a little nervous. I don't know where my clients are going to go. I don't know who's going to take over the club, you know. And I said, Patrick, I said, stop for a second. Why are you manifesting out of fear that you are assuming it's going to get worse? So all of us are assuming it's going to get worse. Why don't we manifest the fact that it's going to get better? We are going to, I go, you're going to have more abundance. You're going to have more clients. You're going to be making more money. You're going to be at a club you like better than you are at. And so because when we don't know, we manifest out of fear, we manifest the worst scenario. Why can't we manifest the ideal scenario that the world will be better? It will be peaceful, we'll be healthier, we'll be happier, we'll be more successful, we'll be more engaged. I mean, why can't we manifest a better scenario as opposed to everybody's walking around in fear thinking it's going to be worse than it is today, right? And that's why they want to go back. But why can't we move forward believing it's going to be better and manifest that?
I think that's really fantastic, a fantastic observation, because I think right now, if you read the polls and read the newspapers, it's all around the negative news, and it's all around things have never been this broken before. Every day you turn around, something else is broken, something else doesn't work like it used to. It's never going to get better than this, and you know, it can turn us all into victims very quickly. And I think that there are ways that we can each grab control of something small in our lives and turn it around and make something even better out of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree, because I think the thing that Kimberly brought up and you brought up, Jonathan, is so in some ways we've quote unquote been programmed that change is negative, and so we want to keep things and preserve things in the way they were. And then the other one is the more that things get revealed about what it was not true, what didn't exist, I think of it as like, great, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's find a new reality. All right. So thank you, Eliza from Bethesda, for your question today. We hope you, our viewers, and listeners gain new insights on leader skills needed in 2022. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like the episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership-askthecoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership-Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to one of our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today. Tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.